Supporting Black Lives Matter Week. Is there a member of the board that would like to bring this?
So there is a copy of board members in our email address of the Black Lives Matter resolution, and we can send it from Miss Turquoise Parker at gmail.com. Y'all can pull that up.
Well, I can, while we're pulling it up, I could just state my own preference. Given that it's not been posted and people haven't had a chance to look at it, I think there's going to be strong support for this. And what I would like to do is, because I don't see that it would hurt anything, would be to actually pass it at the next meeting so that there's time for it to circulate and be seen. I'm strongly in favor of it. I just think that would be a more powerful way for us to do this, because at this point, very few people actually have access to it.
I'd like us to read it, though.
Tonight?
Yeah, tonight.
And then, that's fine. with me.
Send it, yeah,
Sure.
send it for action.
I'm ready to pass it tonight. I don't know, I don't have any hesitation. I've seen it and
Is that a
appreciate all the
motion?
work that went
Is that a
into it.
motion?
Well, I
We can pass tonight or at the large board meeting, but I do think we should bring it back at the large board meeting as well, so that the public can see it and we can read it again at that time as well.
Well, I'm seconding your motion, Natalie.
Okay,
Is that a motion?
hang on.
And then we still bring it.
First, we're going to read it. Okay, Minnie, would you like to begin?
I certainly will. Resolution recognizing Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action 2020. Whereas the national movement of teachers, parents, administrators, and scholars have come together to proclaim an annual week of action, affirmation, and solidarity to be called Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action. And
Whereas the annual Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action will take place during the month of February to coincide with and augment Black History Month, the 2020 Week of Action is February 3rd through 7th, and
Whereas schools should be places for the practice of equity, for the building of understanding, and for the active engagement of all in creating pathways to freedom and justice for all people. And
Whereas the Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action is intended to highlight, uplift, and affirm the rich history and contributions of the Black community, to cultivate in Black students a sense of pride, self-worth, and self-love, and to develop a widespread acknowledgement and appreciation for the contributions of Black people in to our community. And
Whereas Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action is further intended to encourage ongoing critical reflection and courageous conversations concerning systemic racism, racial injustice, racial and ethnic bias, and to affirm the right of Black students to be treated with respect and dignity within schools and communities, because when Black people are liberated, we are all liberated. And
Whereas the Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action may offer a variety of educational opportunities, such as workshops, panel discussions, cultural events, instructional activities, and expressions of unity. And
whereas the National Education Association endorsed the Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action at the 2018 Representative Assembly. And
whereas the North Carolina Association of Educators, NCAE, endorsed the Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action, present and future at the 2018 Representative Assembly.
whereas, I think there's supposed to be an and there. And, you want to say your and?
And, comma, and.
Whereas, having said that, I'll put my glasses on. Whereas the Durham Association of Educators believes that we have a special responsibility to understand and intentionally work to undermine racism and other forms of injustice in our curricula, our classroom cultures, and our relationships with our students, our parents, and each other, because our collective future depends on it.
therefore, be it resolved that the Durham Public Schools Board of Education welcomes the participation of educators, staff, and students in community-based activities and events related to Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action. And
Now therefore, be it further resolved that the Durham Public Schools Board of Education encourages principals to submit names of educators across grade levels and content areas from their building to be the Black Lives Matter Week of Action 2020 building leads, to use resources that are inclusive of all of our diverse learners in order to enrich instruction on an ongoing basis throughout the entire academic year so that we can continue to build bridges and mirrors for our students, staff, and community to be what to each other we all deserve. As W.E.B. Du Bois stated, the teachers of Black youth must believe in them. They must have faith in them and their community. They must trust them and encourage them and defend them. Right now, that means affirming that we are committed to the emotional and physical safety of Black students by endorsing and facilitating the Black Lives Matter Week of Action 2020 in Durham Public Schools.
Thank you, board members. Is there a motion regarding the resolution?
I move approval with the amendments as read. Yeah.
And
Is-
I'm happy to support it. I do think, I don't like the process of the public not seeing what we're doing. I like what Bettina said. We can bring it back at the next meeting, so that other people have a chance to comment on it. I would welcome that. So I'm happy to support it as is, as long as we bring it back a second time.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. There's been a motion and a second to approve it. We can approve it, and then we can have a second motion to add it back to our next agenda, to bring it back signed and present it to
Action.
the community. Yep, for action. Okay. All in favor of passing the resolution, say aye. Aye. The resolution passes unanimously.
I move that we move this item to the action items list for the regular board meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Lee, seconded by Ms. Umstead, that we add this agenda item to our agenda for action at our large June board meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It shall be added. Community, thank you for bringing this. Happy to support it. Item 7, Chief of Staff.